I'm Sally Coulthard. I'm an author and smallholder and have spent 2 decades building the good life with my family and animals in the Yorkshire countryside.
Soil is life. Food is only as healthy as the soil we grow it in. If you've done any kind of gardening, you'll know the better the soil, the more veggies, herbs and fruit you can grow. Know the secrets of healthy soil, and you can also transform a tired plot into a glorious garden full of colour, produce and wildlife. And key to all this richness is one very humble little creature. Welcome to the world of the earthworm.
One way of discovering whether your soil is really healthy is by what's going on underground. If you've got lots of earthworms tunnelling and burrowing in your soil, there's a good chance there are plenty of nutrients down there as well. There are 3 types of earthworm that are working really hard in this veg garden right now. Let me show you. If I dig just slightly under the surface, here we are, I shall find a really small kind of earthworm, and this is called a shallow burrowing earthworm, and its name tells you exactly what it does. It lives no more than about 30 centimetres under the ground, and they tend to be small and pale in colour, and their job is to tunnel left to right like this, horizontally, creating a network of channels, keeping the soil really light and airy. Now I'm just going to put this one back in the soil because they don't like UV light. Now, if I carried on digging even further into the ground, there's another kind of earthworm, and these are much bigger, and I've got one here to show you. These earthworms, there we go, wow. These are the big ones, but these are called deep burrowing earthworms, and they do a completely different job, and they burrow up and down, vertically, like an elevator shaft. And they do a slightly different job from the shallower burrowing earthworms. And their job is to tunnel upwards at night time, come up to the surface and drag dead material back down into the soil, where it decomposes and is digested by the shallow burrowing earthworms. And so these 2 types of worms are working really hard, transforming all the dead and decaying material in the soil into beautiful nutrients. Now, if you've ever wondered, earthworms, if they're chopped in half, will carry on living as 2 earthworms, that's not true. Actually, what happens is that only the front half of an earthworm will survive, and actually it doesn't do the worm any good at all. So no chopping earthworms in half. And if you've ever wondered which is the front half of an earthworm, well, you can see this one actually is searching with its head. But if you're in any doubt, you look for a band around the earthworm's neck called the clitellum, and that tells you which is the head end. Anyway, I'm going to put this earthworm back in the soil where he or she can carry on doing their fantastic work.
The third kind of earthworm, composting worms, I'll come on to in a minute.
So it's really important to encourage earthworms to stay in your garden and hang about and do their great work. There are 2 ways that you can do this. One is to not dig too much. Every time you put your spade or trowel into the surface of the soil, you're actually disrupting that really important network of tunnels and basically trashing their living environment. So the best thing to do is to try and dig as little as possible. Not only is no dig gardening brilliant because it reduces the amount of hard work for you, it also actually discourages weeds. Weed seeds love springing up in disturbed soil, and so if you leave the soil alone, you should have less work to do. The second thing you can do is actually give them something to eat, and that's where mulching comes in. There are lots of different mulches that you can use around the veg garden. We use a few different types here on the small holding. This one here, which is among the broad beans, is mushroom compost. And it's lovely and rich and full of nutrients. Now, we layer this on quite thickly, maybe 1 or 2 inches in early spring. And this not only gives the earthworms plenty to go at, but it also keeps the moisture in the soil and stops any weeds from coming through. And this is strulch, which is basically ground up straw. Now, this is really fabulous, not for particularly growing vegetables in, like the mushroom compost, but for suppressing weeds. And it provides a brilliant cover for the soil, stopping the moisture from escaping and keeping any weeds at bay. So these dazzling, stripy worms live life on the surface, and they'll be wild and free in your garden. But you can also use this type of earthworm, that are also known as compost worms, to help you turn your vegetable peelings and other kitchen waste into beautiful, nutrient-rich compost. So surface worms or compost worms are the absolute perfect worm to use in a wormery. And I'm going to show you around mine, which I use all the time. So it's basically like an apartment building for worms. The top layer, I'm just going to take the lid off. Inside here, this is where we put our vegetable peelings, bits of cardboard, tea bags, things that are going to decompose really easily. And the worms will rootle around in here, slowly digesting the material and turning it into compost. Each time this is full, I simply add another layer on top, an empty one, and the worms will move upwards and start using this layer. Now, the brilliant thing about this is really that you just kind of leave it alone. So I'll just show you, this is a layer that's currently one that we're working on. If you just move that, you'll be able to see the worms wriggling around under here. They're very happy. This layer is pretty much ready to go, and it's full to the brim of lovely, rich compost. Now, one of the added bonuses of a wormery is that all this decomposition results in a black liquid called vermijuice. And I can just siphon that off every so often. As you can see, it's the colour of a strong espresso. And it is absolutely brilliant as a fertiliser. And I'll use this in the greenhouse, diluted about 1 to 10, and it'll really supercharge the tomatoes and peppers and aubergines that I'll be growing in the greenhouse. Now, setting up a wormery is really easy, and I wanted to show you how. When you order a wormery, it'll come with everything you need, apart from a spoonful of soil from your own garden and some shredded paper. But basically, the most important ingredients that you're going to need are this, which is coir, kind of coconut fibre that I've gently moistened. So that's lovely. That starts as a kind of bedding material for the worms. A little bit of worm food. This is just to help them really get started. And of course, the magic ingredient, a bag full of beautiful tiger worms or compost worms. So to start it off, you have the base already. This should have the tap attached, or it's just really easy to fix on yourself. And you add your first layer. You'll just start off with 1 layer to start off with. And this, I've just put some cardboard in the base, and this is just to stop the coconut matting falling through to start off with. So this I'll put on here, and then when that's firmly in, I'll tip the entire contents of the coconut fibre in. That's it, that should be fine. Doesn't have to be perfect. And the worms are going to love this. So just spread that out in there. The next really important ingredient is a trowel full of your own soil from your garden. Now, soil is absolutely packed with beneficial bacteria, and so we add just a spoonful into the wormery, and that'll add lots of those wonderful bacteria that also help break down the soil and turn it into compost. The next thing we're going to add is a handful of worm food, and this is just to give the worms a kickstart before you add lots of your own vegetable peelings and delicious things for them to eat. Now, the best bit is tipping in the compost worms. There'll be hundreds in the bag when you arrive, and they are absolutely beautiful. They'll be nice and wriggly and ready to go straight in. So I'm just going to pour them in. That's it. Now look at that. I don't know if you noticed, but the worms all bunched together, and that's natural, and that's just a way of them keeping warm together. And actually, the collective name for worms is a clue, C-L-E-W, and that comes from a Middle English word, cluen, meaning a ball of wool. And you can see why, because they look like a tangle of wool all together. But as they get comfortable, they'll separate out and they'll make space for each other. The last two things you need to add is just a handful of shredded newspaper. Paper and cardboard are actually really useful things to add to the compost because it adds a bit of air and structure and stops the mixture from getting too wet and slimy. So I'll keep adding shredded paper or bits of cardboard along with vegetable peelings and coffee grounds and things like that. So I'm just going to put that in there and then set them off with a delicious meal of my vegetable peelings, which are things like bananas, as you can see, orange peel, tea bags as long as they're biodegradable. I've got coffee grounds in here. Anyway, the whole lot can go in. I'll even shred the container and that can go in too. And in maybe 4 to 6 weeks, the compost worms, especially if the weather's nice and warm, will have done their work and have turned all those scrap kitchen waste into something absolutely brilliant. Right, I'll just put the lid on and they'll be ready to go. When you're feeding your worms, there are some definite do's and don'ts about what you include. So I put in things like tea bags, coffee grounds, vegetable peelings, bits of cardboard, and even spent flowers and herbs. I would avoid putting in any kind of meat or eggshells. Eggshells take a long time to decompose, and meat tends to attract vermin. Things like cheese I wouldn't put in, or any dairy. But apart from that, you can pretty much put anything you want in your wormery. So that's the worms fed.
It'll take 4 to 6 weeks for the earthworms to munch through all the vegetable peelings and bits of cardboard.
It can take a bit longer in winter, but generally they work fairly quickly. And before you know it, you'll have handfuls of black gold to put in your garden and lots of fantastic worm juice to feed to your vegetables.